time was one of the things that Mikey enjoyed and hated at the same time. But during this time, he really hated it very much because Raph enjoyed pummeling him to the ground. Once in position, he bowed as Master Splinter entered the dojo. The mutant rat looked down to each of his sons and daughter with a kind smile, but the smile was gone the moment his eyes fell upon Mikey's expression. He could sense the fear and rush in his youngest son. Even looking into his eyes, he could see it. However, he could tell Mikey did not want to talk about it, so he pushed it aside and focused his attention on everyone else, including Mikey.
Today will be his sparring. Leonardo versus Oliver, Raphael versus Donatello, and Michelangelo versus Kofuya.
Once the umpires were announced, the turtles got into position. Mikey and Kofu were the first ones to go, so they were already in position. However, Mikey seemed a bit off. His goofy expression wasn't there as usual. Instead, there was a focused look, and his voice wasn't heard. Kofu looked at him with worry before shooting a glare at Raph. She pulled out her giant scythe from her shell as Mikey pulled out his nunchucks. The orange-masked turtle looked at his younger sister and got in position. Over by the others, Master Splinter could also sense the change in his youngest son.
Hajime!
He called out. Kofu swung her scythe towards Mikey, but he dodged quickly. He made a quick sweep under Kofu's feet, knocking her to the floor. The dark pink-masked turtle jumped back up and began then to spin her scythe like a wheel. To her surprise, Mikey was paying close attention to her movements, like a hawk stalking its prey. Inside of Mikey's mind, a voice that was not his own cheered for him.
Go, Mikey! I know you can do it!
He didn't decide whether or not to take this cheering or not, but nonetheless, he felt confident from the cheering. To everybody's surprise, Mikey had managed to take down Kofu without getting a hit, and by the female turtle's large scythe. One flip was enough to knock her down.
Diame!
Splinter yells out. Mikey stopped and smiled, holding his hand down to his little sister, to which Kofu accepted and got up with her brother's help. The two turtles walked over to their older brothers, who were exchanging looks to one another as they didn't know how to process Mikey's victory. Even Kofu would usually beat the orange-masked turtle to the ground, but not today. Even Splinter was amazed. When Mikey sat down on his knees, Leo managed to gather his words and asked his little brother,
Mikey, how did you remain focused like that?
He could tell Leo's voice was a little lost at balance, but Mikey shook it off and answered, Pinkie Pie was cheering for me. Splinter's ear twitched from the answer and turned to his youngest son, a bit concerned yet curious.
Who?
He asked. Mikey turned towards his father and smiled.
Pinkie Pie, my new friend. She was cheering for me,
he replied, slightly nervous. He had not yet introduced Pinkie to Sensei, fearing he wouldn't accept her one bit at all. He really doesn't want to throw out the pony doll, because he already felt comfortable with her, and he was already cleaned up and stitched. Ollie could sense his brother's slight distress, so he stepped in.
Mikey found the pony doll in a garbage can during patrol, and he took it home with us, he explained. And he got it washed up, and April stitched it up while she was here.
Splinter looked towards Mikey, and the orange-masked turtle flinched a bit, nervous and scared of how his father would react. Not wanting to hear it, he quickly ran out of there before Splinter could say anything. The mutant rat was surprised by Mikey's sudden escape, which caused the turtles, except Raph, who just growled, to turn to their father with worried looks.
Sensei, we need to talk,
Leo spilled. Splinter nodded in agreement and stood before his sons and daughter. Raph just scoffed and glared at Leo.
Just leave him be. And Leo, he's just a crybaby, he said.
Not far from the dojo, Mikey could hear Raph's insult and looked down. Hurt by the insult. In his arms, he was carrying Pinky so he could show his father, but now he didn't want to. Oh, with Raph in there. In his head, he could hear the same high-pitched voice whisper quietly to him.
Don't listen to him, Mikey. You're not a crybaby.
He would have jumped from the voice, but he felt calm, since he had already gotten used to it due to the cheers it gave to him while sparring with Kofu. Though it was a bit unsettling to hear another voice in his head. That wasn't his voice. When he turned his gaze over to his pony doll.
Is that you talking?
He asked quietly. He certainly didn't want to catch any of his brother's or sister's attention, but he needed to know the answer.
Yes, it's me, Pinkie Pie. I'm talking to you in your head,
the voice replied. The turtle's eyes widened with amazement and surprise. A wide smile spread across his face, and he hugged her with joy. Just then, he heard his brothers coming, so he quickly walked away with Pinkie Pie in his arms. He was worried that his brothers or sister would hear Pinkie's voice as he walked to his room, carrying her with him.
Don't worry, Mikey. You're the only one who can hear me. None of the others can't.
Mikey relaxed when Pinkie explained how this new communication works. Once he entered his room, he sat down on his bed and hugged her close to him. His smile had turned into a kind and grateful smile, as his baby blue eyes looked into the cerulean ones on Pinkie Pie.
Thank you for the cheering during sparring, Pinkie.
It means a lot to me, he said in a grateful tone. When he was hugging the doll, he was unaware the doll's eyes began to twinkle a bit. Sparkling like stars, it was as if Pinkie felt appreciated and grateful that she helped Mikey. Outside of their room, however, Raph was listening to the conversation, and he had a big frown on his face. He watched his little brother hug the pony doll with a growl before he tore his eyes off the scene and stomped off. Stupid Mikey. It's a stupid doll, he grumbled to himself. He should have just let it rot in the garbage. He turned his direction towards the dummy that looked identical to the shredder and began to punch it. Why does he have to be so annoying? He snarled to himself. He continued like this before Leo and Ollie walked in. The two of them were going to play video games, but they couldn't keep Mikey off of their minds. Their little brother's behavior was starting to worry them, and they never wanted Mikey to change. They just have to hope it isn't permanent.